Namaskaram, namaskaram all of you.
Namaskaram.
Namaskaram, Sadhguru.
Not bad at all.
Thank you very much, Sadhguru. And I think the whole industry is really looking forward to this. So, Sadhguru, my first question to you is, if you look at it in the last 72 days, India is probably the only country where people have got food. 130 crore people have got food. There was no panic. There was no rush. There was no fighting with each other. And this has happened because of the traders, the small kiranas, the grocery, the food people who actually served the retailers, served the community during this time. The humanity, the people have got used to living very simple, eating very simple things. And I'm saying, will this be bringing a totally new change in the way retail works in India? Do you see this whole thing bringing an absolutely new way of retailing? And India is a nation of shopkeepers, Sadhguru.
Namaskaram, I don't have to tell you how this works, all of you are in it. But as you know, even today, 95% of the essential retailing happens only through these kiranas or small shopkeepers. Well, whether we are a land of shopkeepers or not that is a different matter. But definitely, there is these little shops servicing small number of people, small populations all over the place, has been the way India has been because in early 90s, 97% of India's population was self-employed. A whole lot of them were selling groceries or even, if they have 10 kgs of tomato, there is one retailer for that. I'm saying for every little vegetable, one person was sitting, they're all retailers in their own right. All they had was a gunny sack and a place to sit, but still they were all retailers. That number is slowly decreasing, it should decrease further because too many people are engaged in doing one little job, and that is where the big retailers come in. But as yet, the big retailers have not come in to really service the larger populations, especially the rural populations. It is the small retailers who are doing this, and this is the way of life that, if you have big retailers, there is efficiency, there is cleanliness, there is various other aspects. But at the same time, at times like this, I don't think they would have been able to service the entire population without people going far away. Right next to their house, there's one little kirana shop which is servicing them. So this is the flip side of it, which we are sort of right now admiring because without going even a kilometer, somewhere there is a shop where you can buy what you need. And that guy somehow manages to procure the stocks. We don't know how he does it, it's quite a miracle because on his little moped or a bicycle, he goes somewhere and gathers everything and puts it in his shop. Especially in rural India, that's how it's been. So yes, at a time like this, they have served well, but they are the ones who've been serving this country. Tell me if I am wrong, I think in my understanding, probably the big retailers have come into play only in the last 10 or 15 years max, am I right?
Yeah, about 15-20 years ago.
Okay. So, before that it was all these small retailers. There are many negatives to that also in terms of quality of product, the weighing aspect of it, which is a big issue with small shops. All these issues are there. But at a time like this, we are admiring everybody who serves us, so definitely they have served the nation well at a time like this.
Sadhguru, what about Europe and US? I mean, in this 72 days lockdown, they've also got locked down inside. They haven't been able to go to shopping malls and shops. Habits are changing. Do you see the world will become very minimalistic? The world will change in terms of the way they shop?
Well, if you don't have money in your pocket, you will become minimalistic. And that possibility is very much there for all of us. Irrespective of what is the nature of our activity, all of us it depends how long the virus lasts. Right now, we don't have one single scientific voice clearly telling us, this is the nature of this virus, this is what could happen. There is not one single voice. Every day it is changing. I was talking to the global, Asian doctors in the world and they were telling me, every day they're publishing 128 new papers on COVID. Can you believe that? 128 new papers being published per day right now in the last 60 days or so. So that is because every day they're discovering new things and everything is one paper. Who is going to collate all these papers and say, okay, this is the nature of this virus, this is what we can do. We have no clue about the virus. Right now we are only trying to contain or control human behavior. That's the only thing we know. We just don't know anything about the virus. Not forget about a vaccine, we don't even have a defined protocol as to how to treat a person who is infected. Because for one person it's a respiratory problem, another person's liver is going bad, another person is having stroke, all kinds of things, variety of things. So we have never really faced anything like this. Till now, viral infections have largely been respiratory in nature. When it happened, the Spanish flu happened in 1918, we did not have antibiotics, we did not have a medical system the way we have today. So today if such a thing happened, we know how to deal with pneumonia, all right? But with this new virus that we have, we do not know what it will do to us. A whole lot of people are just falling dead. Hypoxia is happening, oxygen levels are just going down and they don't even feel it. They just go to bed, lung collapses and they don't wake up. Hundreds of them are not waking up in their beds, and we must know this, they are not counted as COVID casualties in any country. People who are just falling dead, they're being given to natural causes, but because the dead bodies are no more tested, they think it's a waste to test the dead bodies, so they are not given either positive or negative results. So the number of people who are simply falling dead alone, especially in United States, people living alone, just falling dead in their homes, that number is very big, but we are not counting those numbers as COVID casualties. So having said that, right now one thing is the fear of stepping out is controlling people's shopping instincts. Another thing is, whatever little money you have, you better save it for tomorrow. Bread is the thing right now. Because at this point, nobody is thinking of doing any shopping. Only thing is, people who are big drinkers, you saw the moment the alcohol vents were opened, they all just went crazy. In one day, on 8th of May, in a single day, Tamil Nadu government sold 170 crores worth of liquor. In a matter of few hours in the evening, they just opened and boom, it just got sold out. So there are some essential things which will sell like that. Rest is all non-essential, even bread and rice is non-essential. Alcohol is super essential right now. So many things will come down because people don't have the money in their hands. But now all this depends on how long will it last. I don't know, my gut feeling is probably by September, mid-September, early October, India should be quite back on its legs. Economy should be working hard, maybe it'll not reach that place, but at least everything will be functional. I somehow feel that way, but there is no data to support my gut feeling. There's not one single data which says, yes, this is possible, because data is all confusing. The data that you see right now, what we thought is infection just 15 days ago, today you see Mumbai, Chennai, Ahmedabad, Delhi, everything is just going nuts, okay? And now all these migrants who have gone to the villages, to what extent they will take it to rural population, you do not know. Generally, I believe rural population is far more resilient in terms of their immune systems. They may not be affected, but they are not the big shoppers. The shoppers are in urban centers, and urban people don't have the same immune system that the rural people have, so they will be very, very cautious. And you heard some Mumbai businessman hiring a A320 to transport 4 members of his family. You heard that. So that's wholesale tickets, air tickets for retail usage, all right? You're buying a whole plane to transport 4 members of your family, because that is the level of fear that is there, you don't want to get it. And right now, I think that is a fundamental responsibility all of us have, that through this whatever period it is, 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, one important thing is all of us must stay alive, because that's the main thing that we need to do. Other things are next, we can shop later. I know this is not an encouraging thing to say, but Right now, staying alive is most important because it's not a joke. It's not a joke, it can just get you or me or anybody, just like that. And who it'll get next, we don't know. Irresponsibly, people are talking about herd immunity. Scientific terms are being thrown around in the media, well, let's go for herd immunity. Herd immunity means your infection levels should go beyond 70% of the population. If infection happens to 70% of the population, it means that we will wipe out the geriatric population in our societies completely. Those over 75, 80 years of age, we will just wipe them out, and children below 1 year of age, most probably we will wipe them out. And in between, what all complications, health complications we create, we do not know, because it is no more just people in vulnerable age group who are dying. A whole lot of medical professionals, about 142 doctors have died in the world. Most of them are between the ages of 42, 55, 60, within 60. But many of them have died like this because of the level of exposure. So what level of exposure we are into depends on many things. Right now, they announced, airlines will open up, but a whole lot of flights, I don't know the number, but a significant number of flights never flew because not one ticket is booked. Nobody wants to go. Because particularly an airplane where there is circulated air, till we come up with some kind of purification for the circulation so that it will disinfect the air, and I don't know what complications that will bring in, changing the airplanes to be capable of doing such a purification process, all this is too much work. It can't be just done overnight by anybody. So having said that, I think the only thing that we know how to do right now about the virus is social distancing. If now, I'm saying from today, the entire world, or at least India, let us say, if every human being just stays away from every other human being for 15 days, virus is finished. Do we have that commitment, discipline to make that happen? That's a big question. Already it is what is it, 72 days, is it?
Yeah.
That is par on the golf course. So, people are frustrated, now they're beginning to talk, I don't care if I die, but I need a haircut, I need to go to the restaurant, need to go and attend to my business. This kind of frustration is building up, and it'll be very difficult to contain populations like this for too long. Actually, it's quite incredible, especially the Indian population. Well, certain amount of enforcement has been there, but I feel for the size of population and the diversity of population that we have managed to do an effective lockdown, which is incredible, though a few irresponsible people have been doing things, but largely majority of the population has done this. I feel it was a very, very politically, economically and socially an extremely bold step that the government took, and people have cooperated largely and made that happen. But as you see in the big cities, we are realizing it's not enough. The moment we get back to activity, now Chennai is spiking up like anything. We thought Tamil Nadu is totally in control in the beginning. First 21 days, we thought we are doing great. I spoke to the chief minister and he said, no problem at all. Within another 7 to 8 days' time, we will make it zero. But see where it's gone. All it takes is 15-20 people to come from elsewhere and that's it, it'll burst open. So now we are fearing second wave. Even when the Spanish flu happened, the first wave started in January, February, it took a certain number of people. But the second wave which came in August, September, that was the real killer with Spanish flu. So now in United States, they're expecting somewhere between October end to December, a second wave, which they believe which will take 5 to 10 times the number of people that it's taken right now. This is the estimates we are making, but nobody knows for sure. This is a fact. I've spoken to many doctors, scientists. The real thing is nobody has a single clue exactly how this virus is going to behave. That uncertainty is a terrible problem for every business.
Yeah, Sadhguru, when you said non-essentials, I mean in India and around the world, 40 to 50% of retail business is non-essentials, which is non-food and grocery. And our estimates and our research and survey, when we looked at the cash flows and the amount of money the businessman has, whether it is small business or large corporations around the world, we are seeing about 25 to 30% of them saying we're not going to survive even June end or July end because there's no cash left for them. And they are responsible for India, maybe about 25, 30 million people, 40 million people, globally maybe much more. So there's a huge amount of fear and anxiety from small businessmen to large businessmen who are responsible for people, employees. And one has to really see how they will look at it. I mean, it's a tough time for them, Sadhguru. It's very, very tough.
No, these are challenging times, no question about it. Very hard times for everybody. For individual people, daily wages, what difficulties they're going through. People who employ them, you're talking about your difficulty. Industries, because retail is the front end. The first thing that needs to recover is retail. If retail doesn't start rolling, then what is the point of manufacturing? It is very important, the front end should start rolling first. I think the government has a plan. I know they have not spoken much about it right now, but they feel there is a plan for the retail that they will unfold over a period of time, because they understand that first thing is to create demand, then only manufacturing will naturally pick up. But as you know, all the workers have left for their villages, they're not going to come back all of a sudden. In my estimate, I think at least 70% of them will not come back till Diwali. They will not come back, because they would like to participate in that agricultural pattern which will go on from July to October, November. They will participate in that, and post-Diwali only, post-harvest, they will come back, most of them. Because at least there is food in the village. They can grow something and they can eat. So they will not risk coming to a city and looking for employment. They do not know whether they're employed or not, because a whole lot of them are unorganized sector. So there are lots of challenges. These are not simple times.
Sadhguru, I have Simon who's based in Cape Town, South Africa. Similar issues, similar challenges, but he has a question for you. Simon, go ahead.
Sadhguru.
Namaskaram. In the month of April, I was to be in South Africa, but I called it off.
we were waiting for you, but we didn't see you arrive, so we understand. Sadhguru, I worry about a different thing, and I see in some governments around the world quite dictatorial tendencies, and that this gives government an opportunity to do what it likes to do in many, many countries, to control. And I have a concern about this. I think my own country started to look as if it was doing that, and under the leadership of our own president, has managed to pull itself back from the brink and is behaving, I think, in an appropriate way. But I see other countries where government is enjoying this confusion and taking control, and I am concerned for civil liberties. Perhaps you would answer.
Definitely, hard times like this, suppose there is a war in a nation, naturally governments will take charge of things. Many basic human rights and other things will be curtailed, emergency laws will be promulgated. Right now in India, we have epidemic, there's a law for epidemic from 1876 or something. So that gives sweeping powers to the government. But at a time like this, I wouldn't worry so much about that, because right now staying alive is most important. Maximum number of people must stay alive, it's very important. For this, controls may be needed. Well, I'm also concerned long-term, if this thing continues for 2-3 years, let's say, then it'll become normal for us to be, controlled. We like to be controlled, we will become like that. See, this has already happened to us. Just one incident like 9/11 happened, okay, the World Trade Center came down. After that, just see our lives, just about anybody puts their hand on us and pats us down wherever we go. They're taking off our belts, our pants may fall down. You're taking off your shoes, you're taking off your belt. I'm saying it's just crazy, we wouldn't have taken this just 25 years ago. If somebody said they want to pat you down to get onto an airplane, I would say, I will not get into the airplane, all right? Take off your shoes means I would not have gotten into the airplane. But now we say anything, you can't Even especially if you're getting into your plane in United States, you can't even laugh or joke, immediately guns will be pointed at you, all right? So, yes, unfortunately, these situations can create those possibilities, very much possible if it lasts for more than 12 months. People will forget about civil liberties, other things, everybody will think only about survival, survival. It will become like this. Physical survival and economic survival will become the prime interests of people, finer things in the society, subtler aspects of life, all will be forgotten for some time. That is why these are extremely challenging times. It is… I don't know if it's sunk into everybody, I don't think it has. People think once the lockdown is over, we'll be back to partying. That's not how it's going to be. Till the virus mutates itself to a milder form, which right now people say is the only hope, which is what happened to the previous viruses. Even the previous pandemics that happened at one time, whatever times that they happened, that we remember in history 2-3 times, we did not do anything to handle them. Somehow they handled themselves. Because virus sees us as habitat to live. They don't want to kill us, they want us to live and they want to live in us. That is their way. But right now they're living so strongly that we are dying. So after some time, if they understand the nature of who we are and how much we can withstand, they may calibrate themselves in such a way. This is what has happened throughout history with the with the pathogen development and how our bodies or different animals get used to it. So we really don't know anything about it, we don't have a clue what we will do about it. We are only talking about controlling human behavior. So retailing, if it opens up, no contact retailing you have to do. That means once again, you have to bring various dispensing machines and this and that. That means millions of people employed will all go. So right now, in my opinion, this may be a very harsh thing to say at this point because people still feel everything will be fine in the next month or so. But if the worst case scenario is, in every nation, one thing we must do is, we must keep the agricultural production fully on. This is most important because we have to make sure there is no starvation. We don't know whether they will buy it in a shop or it will be given to them free or something else will happen, we don't know. But we must have food in every nation. Whatever the number of… amount of population we have, for that we must have food stored up. This is important, that is why the agricultural activity in every nation is most important. Right now for us, the monsoons are just impending, this is the time when everything needs to happen. In rural India, the activity is on, at least in southern India, it's very on. It's important, if not anything else, at least the basic cereals must be there in substantial quantity. Otherwise, we will have to face starvation deaths. Once starvation comes, social unrest, the problems that will multiply. We should not multiply this virus problem into other kinds of problems, which is very much possible that if any government fails to manage food supply to its citizens, then forget about social liberties, there will be that kind of social unrest. We must understand, either by promulgation of emergency laws, social liberties can be taken away, or when mobs start burning things on the street, again social liberties are gone. I would prefer it comes from the government because when the situation is over, we can say withdraw this, we can put pressure on that. But when mobs take over and they start burning down property and attacking people and breaking down things, then social liberties are completely lost and we will have no place to go and petition that these liberties should come back to us. So these are extremely challenging times, our focus should be on the right things. Right now I feel essential thing is that we stay alive. Next thing is we ensure there is substantial food production in every country. Everything else is secondary right now.
Thank you.
Sometimes very scary, Sadhguru. Yeah, but I think that's the reality.
No, I said that is the worst case scenario, need not be so. Suppose, let us say by August, September, we are back into economic activity. It may take another 6 months, 8 months to get back to normal, but it's okay, we will get back there. But if this virus threat is so serious that people are not willing to come out for next 12 months, then it is a serious issue.
Yeah, Kishore has a question for you, Sadhguru. Kishore, go ahead.
Namaskar, Sadhguruji. In our ancient text, there has been references of yuga change. Is this leading to some yuga change because we are changing the way we interact, we socialize, the way we are going to be governed, the way we are going to consume, the way we are communicating through digital medium now, the way we are going to dress up? I think Simon raised the point of the way from capitalism to authoritative governments. So is it a yuga change?
See, when we say yuga, we are talking about certain cycles of time. When I say certain cycles of time, I don't know if this is a platform where I should go detail into this, but essentially what it means is the solar system is going through a certain cycle. This cycle takes approximately 25,920 years is one full cycle. A half a cycle is 12,960 years. So, the first dimension, this is in terms of the solar system, its nearness to the super sun around which it goes. Depending upon its closeness, accordingly, the influence of the sun… See, right now, the influence of our sun is minimalistic right now. You know this? Solar minimum is happening right now. Solar flares are at the minimum, solar minimum is what we are going through. So similarly, the distance between us and the sun decides which is summer. Say right now in South Africa, they are saying it is winter for them because it's southern hemisphere. Why is it? Your distance or your angle of, like how you're facing the sun decides whether this is summer or winter. Similarly, with reference to the solar system itself, in relation to the super sun, this cycle is going on. So the four yugas that we have talked about, the Sat Yuga is always the longest one. It is approximately 5,184 years is what the calculation says. Treta Yuga is 3,888 years. Dwapara Yuga is 2,592 years. Kali Yuga, which is furthest from the super sun, when there is very little influence from that, because of that human consciousness will go down, various other things will happen. This is only 1,296 years. Kali Yuga began in the year 3,140 BC, that is a little over 5,000 years. Kali Yuga ended in 548 BC and Dwapara Yuga has been going on. Dwapara Yuga ends in 2082. So are we in that? We are in a little bit of a cusp that we are shifting from Dwapara Yuga to Treta Yuga, but those things, those time changes will bring about existential changes. What we are going through may feel like an existential change, but it's only an economic and social change. Only human beings are complaining. None of the other creatures are complaining. Actually, they're all saying, let's make the planet great again, you know So, if the yuga change happens, all life on this planet will suffer because it's an existential change. So this is only a social and economic change, only human beings are complaining, and even a lot of human beings who call themselves ecologists and others, they're saying these are good times because this mad consumerism is going away. This is just the wrong thing to tell the retailers and people who are involved in business. It is a serious threat to everything that we have been doing. I must tell you, it's not just you. All our city centers, we are closing down the properties. Already we've started the process. We are given notices to close down everything because we don't see major congregations happening in the next 12 to 24 months. So our activity is going through a sea change. The very way we function, we're changing because we just cannot go on functioning. Because for us, anything means 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 people gathering at one place, sometimes lakhs of people. So this activity is not going to happen. So it's not just retailers, even spiritual organizations are under serious metamorphosis
Sadhguru, you spoke about migrants going back and you think a lot of people are not likely to come back. I think Rahul Mehta had a question relating to that. Rahul bhai, can you go ahead please?
Namaskar, Sadhguruji.
Namaskaram.
It's a privilege to meet you again. I spent one very, very memorable week at your ashram. So it's a pleasure to meet you again. Sir, you raised the issue of the migrants perhaps not coming back to the cities.
No.
In the garment industry,
I did not say they will not come back. I'm saying right now the way they have gone back, most probably at least 60–70% of them will not come back till Diwali.
So, you're right. Our estimate, sir, is that at least a 30 to 40% of the migrants who have gone there might be tempted to stay back in the villages for several reasons. Number one, of course, the fear of coming back to the cities. Number two, the pleasure of staying for a long period with their families, which they have missed for all these years. And perhaps the serene and peaceful life of their village, which was probably much better than what it was when they left 10 or 15 years ago. Maybe a lot of them might be tempted to stay back. Now, my question, sir, is that will the current village economic model be able to absorb these millions of employable but unemployed people into its model? Because at the moment, from whatever little I have understood, the village economic model basically deals with smaller number of people, more regionalized. Whereas this time the entire parameters might be changing. Do you think the village economy will be able to absorb these people? And if so, what changes do you suggest the villages will have to make to absorb these people?
See, the very fact that they migrated to city shows that there was no employment in the village. If there was a lucrative employment there, why would they have come to the cities? As you know, most of the migrant labor are male. That means their wives, their children, their mothers, their fathers are all still in the village. It is always a struggle. But in spite of that, they've come because there is no employment in the village as such. Even if there is an employment, it's very minimum wages, very meager wages, you have to go for that Manrega scheme or whatever. Otherwise, there is no daily employment, it's very seasonal. When the agricultural activity comes, a certain type of activity comes, there is always a shortage of labor. Once that's over, there is no use for labor. This is the nature of agriculture, that it is very seasonal. You cannot employ them 365 days as industry does. So, having said that, they will not immediately come back simply because one thing is they've gone in a very distressed way, a whole lot of them. They've gone with a certain pain right now. Their pain is, portrayed across the country. I also feel that certain people have been instigating this in a certain way because, see, the best thing would have been everybody stay put where they are. That would be the best for the country. All we had to do was to ensure that they don't starve, which I believe would have been possible if certain forces were not instigating them that, you have to go back, otherwise this will happen, that will happen, you will starve yourself to death. I don't think we would have let them starve themselves to death. Yes, inconveniences, lots of pain would have happened, but we would have still not allowed them to starve to death. Around here I was just so surprised, it's actually shocking that in southern Tamil Nadu or in western Tamil Nadu where we are, where generally, agriculture is in good shape and we are not too far away from cities. But even here, there are thousands of people, if there is no employment for 2 weeks, they are just starving. Right now, we are serving food for over 15,000 people every day. It is a task, I don't know how long we can keep it up. We will try to keep it up, but how long is always a question mark, because it costs an enormous amount of money and infrastructure and various things. So, employment in the village is very, very limited number of days in a year. So they cannot stay there, not because it's pleasant and serene they're going to stay there, not because their heartstrings are being pulled, they're staying there. It is just that they also understand if they come back, all of them will not find employment. So from a village, if 500 people had come from a village, now they will send a scouting team of maybe 25 people or 50 people will come, and when they find employment, they will tell them, you can also come. They will not come en masse. That's why I said 60 to 70% won't come. Maybe 25% will come and try it out. If it works, then they will start calling them, because that's how they came in the first place. That is how they came in the first place. Individuals will not decide and come from a village. It is always as a community that one or two adventurous ones came to the city, they are successful, when they went back, they were wearing better clothes, they looked better, they said, okay, come to Mumbai, I will get you employment. And like this, slowly over a period of time, they came. Once again, the same process will happen, and when that process is happening, suddenly if your business picks up, you will not have hands to handle it. That problem will be there in every industry, particularly industries like construction, retail. They will be the first ones who will face that, and also other established industries which have assembly lines and things, they will struggle, but they can easily, bring their production slowly up, because that will be convenient for them. They can't go into full production straight away. But you can't open half your shop, you have to open your full shop. So you need full staff, or you can go with half staff, but I'm saying these are the problems that we will face, not because of serenity of the village or there is alternate employment there. No, there is no alternate employment there. They could get a brief employment. But the advantage with the village is, you will not starve. Somehow, you will manage your food, at least some cereal, something will happen. Many of them who are working in the cities, who are migrants, their ration cards are in the village, but they come and work here, the ration card is being used by the family, but this guy doesn't have a ration card, but now he will live on his ration card. So starvation today will not happen, because our distribution systems and our ability to do things are much better than what it used to be in 50s and 40s when starvation used to happen. But definitely malnourishment will happen, suffering will happen, enormous mental turmoils will happen. There is a serious problem of mental disturbances, suicides. These things could easily rise unless things the virus decides to go down by itself. It's only virus willing, because we don't have a clue. We don't have a clue how to fix the virus. By September, if the virus has gone down, it's not so much of a threat as it is right now. If that happens, without too much pain, all of us will come out. But if it continues, definitely there is a lot of pain for every one of us, irrespective of what type of activity we are in.
Thank you.
Sadhguru, I was talking to my daughter and said, what is bothering the millennials? And she said, in a time where we have to maintain social distance from one another, how do we ensure that we don't become distant from one another?
So, social distancing, will it leave us becoming distant from each other? No, most of the time people are like this. When they're together, they cannot get along with each other. When they're away, they will miss each other, all right? So, in missing each other, there is a lot more closeness than actually being with each other. So, she need not worry about that.
Sadhguru, I have Amitabh, I think he has a question for you. Amitabh, will you go ahead, please?
Namaskar.
Namaskar, Sadhguru. Namaskar. Sadhguru, my privilege to be with you today, and thank you, Nagesh. Sadhguru, I want to ask you, India is the youngest population in the world. 60% of us are under the age of 30. But they are also living in a turbulent, unpredictable, and complex time in this world of constant flux and change which is happening. I have two children. My daughter just graduated from a design school. My son is now going into a design college, wants to go. I'm actually, this is a personal question, but the way you said the whole thing in the last 45 minutes, I had to ask you this. For the young, just starting out their adult lives, this is causing confusion about their identities, anxiety about self-esteem, and also fear about their futures. How would you advise us and tell us what should we be guiding them? What should we be telling them? And what should be the way forward? Because I'm also, there are no words to explain to them what's happening and what's the future all about.
See, let us understand this. We are talking about an uncertain time. That means we do not know what will be the status in the next 15 days or 30 days or 60 days. We do not know, that's a fact. First thing is we must come to terms with that. Everybody is making plans. Don't make any plan right now. Just sit and observe how the situation evolves. When the situation becomes appropriate for us to act, we must act, whatever the nature of our activity. Whether you are doing design or retail or spiritual process, we must sit and wait and watch, because uncertain times means just that we don't know what is the next step. So at a time like this, the thing to do is just this. Because if there are challenging times, the only thing that you can do is you can keep yourself at your best to handle the challenge. But when there are challenging times, people think it's their right to become anxious, people think it's their right to become depressed, it is their right to become frustrated. No. When times or situations are challenging, what it means is, in some way it's turned against us. Now, somebody is these wave surfers or wave riders are there, you've seen at least in the movies or documentaries and things like that. Somebody is riding a wave. What is his dream wave? A tsunami, What everybody thinks is a disaster is his peak adventure, all right? So right now, we don't know what is the nature, size and force of this wave. How far it'll hit us, we still don't know. So right now, making plans and your plans crumbling after 15 days, again making plans and crumbling after 15 days, don't waste your time like this. Sit back, don't get frustrated. All you have to do is, this much you can do. Another 15 days, definitely there's going to be lockdown in Mumbai for sure, probably more. Make yourself 10% physically better, mentally sharper, if it had 10%, emotionally 10% more balanced, and whatever work you're doing, become 10% better, striving to be better. So when challenge comes, those who are better will function better. Those who are not will get wiped out. This is the nature of life. So this may sound pessimistic, I'm not pessimistic, I'm just being realistic. Because you make plans about a situation that you don't know, what is the point? You're just trying to be engaged, that's all. No need to be engaged, right now it's locked down. Sit back, watch the situation, make yourself better. When the situation comes, what kind of situation we will see? We don't know what. Well, we are calling people, we've started calling doctors and nurses and medical personnel as warriors. So it is some kind of a war. See, India has seen, for example, 4 wars, but thanks to our brave soldiers, the war happened only on the borders. If they didn't fight well, the war would be happening in the city. So we have never really seen a war, that's what I'm trying to say. War was happening only in the newspaper and the television, all right? Only in the newspaper, because the war was fought on the border. So if war happened in Mumbai city, this means your house will get bombed, if you go out you will get shot, if you go out before you come back your house will be gone, your family would have evaporated. This is war. So compared to those kind of wars, the harshest time in our lifetime this is. Still, if we behave responsibly, we will live, we will see tomorrow and we will create a day after tomorrow the way we want. Don't try to create a tomorrow because we don't know what is tomorrow. We must allow tomorrow to come to us and create a day after tomorrow the way we want.
Sadhguru, Simon has a question for you. Simon, go ahead.
I listened to all these questions and your answers, and in particular I listened to Amitabh and his family situation. But what I see with people around and the people that I interact with is a lot of fear. Fear of losing my job, fear of my family getting ill, fear of a loved one dying. And I agree with you that we are going to have to live with this for many, many months, maybe even years. How do we say to our family, to our people that depend on us for leadership, live with your fear?
See, Simon, I don't know what is the nature of your work that you have done, but most probably I can ask you boldly, or I can assume that in your entire working life, you never had a 72-day break, did you?
I never had a 72-minute break.
Then
And I'm a shopkeeper, like many on this.
I must tell you, in the last 40 years, I've never been home for more than 12, 15 days at the most. In the entire year of 2018, I was home for 32 days. Now 72 days I'm home, sleeping in the same bed, because for me sleeping on the same pillow 2 nights is a big luxury. I'm sleeping on the same pillow 72 nights. And I've lived off a suitcase for 40 years, now I'm picking clothes off a cupboard, you don't know what a luxury it is. I'm eating at home the way I want. Well, I'm in a wonderful place here with all our people, an extremely dedicated and committed teams doing their best, without knowing what's tomorrow. But we know what will not be working tomorrow, so we're dismantling all that and creating alternate systems of how to work. But the important thing is keeping ourselves healthy, strengthening our immune systems, making ourselves fit physically and mentally being strong, above all being joyful and well, because life doesn't see people who are going to work. They tell me in America, some studies say that 70% of the Americans hate their work, not dislike, they hate their work. 5 days in a week, if you hate what you're doing, no wonder in the weekend everybody is overdosed. That's the only that is the only break you're getting. So, all these people who are hating their work, now they're so eager to go back to work, that's really amazing. I'm really amused by that. Because people who are stuck outside somewhere, not able to come to their families, their work and other things, they were always complaining they didn't get time to spend with their families. Now they're stuck with their families, now they're so eager to get out. So the problem is within the human mind. We as human beings, most human beings, we have not learned how to handle our own faculties. This is our problem. See, between other creatures and us, one significant difference in terms of faculties is, because of a certain evolved state of our neurological system, we have a very vivid sense of memory. It is because of this vivid sense of memory that human life is far more complex and rich compared to any other creature's life. They don't have the same sense of memory. We have a very vivid and clear sense of memory about a variety of things. Because of this vivid sense of memory, we have a fantastic sense of imagination. These are two faculties which set us apart as human beings. But please look at the human beings, what is it that they are suffering? What happened 10 years ago, they still suffer. What may happen day after tomorrow, they already suffer. This is what you're telling me now. What may happen, they're suffering. If you're suffering that which does not exist, because what happened 10 years ago does not exist, what may happen day after tomorrow does not exist right now. So most human beings are suffering that which does not exist. Suffering that which does not exist is a psychological ailment. Unfortunately, 80% of the population has gotten into this mess, simply because our education systems are always telling us how to fix the world, how to fix the world. Education has never focused on how to fix myself. Without fixing myself, situations are good, I'm complaining, situations are bad, I'm complaining. Tell me, when economy was going great, did you see people walking on the streets with great joy? They're driving their dream machines. Are they driving that in great joy? 2 minutes if they get stuck in the traffic, they're fretting and shooting out of the rooftops. After all, it's your dream car. If you get to stay 10 minutes more in the traffic jam, what's your problem? No, they will suffer immensely. So what they're suffering is not life, they're suffering the nature of their own mind. Essentially, they're suffering their own faculties. Because the problem is this, you know, you heard of Charles Darwin. He's not a South African, he's British, English, all right?
He might one day evolve to be a South African.
I get that. So, Charles Darwin said something like this, I'm making it very simplistic. A goat could have become a giraffe in a million years' time. or a pig could have become an elephant in so many million years' time. But a monkey became a man rather quickly. So quickly that anthropologists think there is a missing link somewhere and they have not found it. The DNA difference between a chimpanzee and a human being right now is only 1.23%. 1.23% is not much of a difference, isn't it? Because physiologically, that's how far from a chimpanzee we are. But our intelligence and awareness is worlds apart from a chimpanzee. So right now, human problem is this, that you have an intelligence for which you don't have a stable enough base. So, human beings are essentially suffering their own intelligence. If you remove half their brain, everybody will be peaceful. So, what is a great boon, what is a tremendous possibility, we have made it into a big problem simply because we have not stabilized our systems. Because evolution happened to us quickly, we need to work on this, stabilize this. So this is what our inner engineering programs are. I don't know, I'll ask them to send a link to all of you. This is what it is about, to engineer yourself in such a way that you are never an impediment. In every given situation, whatever the situation, we have this option. Either we are part of the problem or we are part of the solution. Every one of us in such challenging times must commit that we will only be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. If you show anxiety, if you show depression, if you show other things, you are becoming part of the problem, you're enhancing the problem. You're just multiplying the problem in your mind. Yes, there is a problem, nobody can say no. But do you want to multiply the problem or do you want to put down the problem? This is a choice as human beings we have. It may happen, hope it doesn't, but the worst case scenario could be this, that after 1 year, we may be living how we lived here about 20 or 25 years ago in terms of what we have and what we don't have. And that's not so bad, I'm telling you. Really? Yes, there'll be lots of pain, but it's not so bad if we stay alive. If we stay alive and we are living how our parents lived, what's the big deal, I'm asking? Let's not make too much fuss about it. I know it's very hard because terrible decisions will have to be made in the next 3 to 6 months. All of us will have to make painful, terrible decisions that we don't like to make, but we have to make it. But it is important as human beings, we rise above our times and show what kind of human beings we are. Only during challenging times, it truly matters what sort of human beings are we. We have to show that we are that sort of human beings. Whatever is thrown at us, whatever kind of problem is thrown at us, we will not become a problem, we will become a solution for that.
Wow. Sadhguru, Kishore has the last question before we wrap up the session. Kishore, please go ahead.
Namaskaram again. Sadhguruji, I've been following this virus thing from a different lens, and I feel that the world's narrative this time has been little different. We have been trying to fight it out. We are saying that Corona harega and we will win. And could the narrative have been different? Normally when I've seen that whenever there was a famine, whenever there was no food in the earlier days, people used to pray. People used to do puja, people used to do havans. This time the narrative is we want to fight it and we want to win. Anything particular this time being different?
That means humanity is moving from religion to responsibility, which is a very positive thing. Because we thought we don't have food and somebody up there is responsible. We are able to produce food and you are able to distribute it in your big bazaars only because you see that you're responsible for this, isn't it? So it is time we manage human economy, human social affairs and national affairs. We take it into our hands, that we don't leave it in God's hands. Because what you refer to as God is the source of creation. Can you complain about the creation? It's too fantastic, isn't it? Yeah. In your wildest imagination, you can't imagine how such variety of life could be created. So creation or the source of creation has done its job. how we run this world right now, how we manage this world, how we make products and processes reach people through our retail chains is entirely our business. We should not look up. We should look forward and look inward.
Sadhguru, we can keep going on with you there. I mean, an hour just flies off. Before we close the session, Sadhguru, any message for the leadership? I mean, there are so many people who wanted to come on the show and ask questions, but we are limited. But your message and your blessings for the whole community, especially the leaders who are running businesses with millions and millions of people. There are lots of messages we got today, but anything specific before we wrap the session?
See, the way we distribute either food or vegetables, either cereals or vegetables or other, daily consuming kind of things, this may have to be rethought. Right now, for example, right now school should begin, in the first week of June. And there is not even a thought about opening the school right now. So, how we distribute or disperse education, definitely we have to rethink. Similarly, how we conduct this retail or the front-end part, in a way retail is the front end for both agricultural produce and industrial produce, all right? It's the front end. How we run this front end, because back end may still run the same way, that also will have to change, but it still may manage to run in the same way because it happens in one place. But this front end of products reaching human beings or societies, how should we do it in future is definitely something we need to think about. It cannot just go on business as usual, because when I really look at it, I've been talking about it and trying to push it in this direction, but people don't most people, Kishore is a different man, but generally most people don't have the determination or the courage to fix things which are already successful, to abandon things which are successful and do something new. Most people don't have it in them. It has to stop, then only they will think of changing the ways. Right now, in a way, we have come to a dead stop in many ways. This is definitely a time to think of how to fix this whole machine. Because the way we were going is definitely not a long-term plan. For example, the way we are consuming is not a long-term plan from this planet. In many ways, we are living as if we are the last generation. We need to rethink this whole thing. I know many of you are involved in the textile thing. As you know, or you may not know, I launched this thing called Save the Weave, trying to bring organic stuff into textiles and whatever. A small effort, but the important thing about this is the way we are consuming things. From 2000 to 2014, our textile consumption has doubled. It is touching such a point that what our grandparents were using, how many clothes they had, today we have over 25 times of that. So next generation will have 50 times or 100 times of that. So where are we going? What is our plan? We don't have a plan, we are just going blindly till we hit something. Fortunately, before we hit something, viruses hit us. I want you to understand, in my opinion, this may be a very harsh opinion, but please, without prejudice, look at it. Instead of being hit by some climate change calamity or a war, this virus is a soft hit. If we behave responsibly, we can rejig ourselves and come out of this somehow. But suppose major climate change calamities happened, then millions of people will die simply. Wars happen, simply everything will be destroyed. Right now, that is not the way it is. That's why I am repeating this again. The most important thing, those of you who feel and think that what you're doing is important, if that is so, if at any time we feel what we are doing is significant work, important work, the most important thing is we must work upon ourselves, to upgrade ourselves in so many different ways, not just in terms of our work, but as human beings, as a larger life. These possibilities are very much there, that every human being should explore this, and above all, the way we were going, It is a journey without plan. Till we hit the wall, we want to go. And is there any doubt that sometime we'll hit the wall? So virus is a soft wall, it's a net. It stopped us, but it's a net, it's not a hard rock. So this is a good time for us to change, especially for India. I would say, if all the business leaders, all of you, if you just wait, watch out, let's see how this plays out. It's a tremendous possibility. As you said, this is a land of young people. If we rejig our economy, rethink of how to do things in the world differently and have a clear-cut plan, where do we want to be in the next 100 years? If this thought process goes on and we act based on a more long-term approach to life, our life and the future generations. If you can't think of 100 generations ahead of us, at least next 2 generations we must think, isn't it? At least next 100 years, we must think our life and next 2 generations. 100 years, how to make it sustainable and make it a practical plan that our children and their children will live well on this planet. Right now, we've been going as if we are the last generation, so this is a soft hit. So let us make use of this before a really hard hit comes. So, this may sound cruel to a lot of people, many in your community may not like it, but I beseech them to sit back and look at it. Where were we going anyway? What was our plan for ourselves and the next generations? What is it? I'm not talking ecological reality, I'm just talking about even business, where are we trying to go? Inevitably, we were going to collapse somewhere, isn't it? Now we've given a soft stop. A nation like ours, which is a young nation, can very easily bounce back if the leadership doesn't lose their heart. So don't lose your heart, don't lose your mind, don't get depressed, frustrated, let's wait, make yourself fit, everybody work to make yourself physically, mentally, emotionally stable and fit and energy-wise very effervescent. We can provide you all the tools that you need to make this happen because the future of future generations is in our hands. The future of the nation and the humanity is in many ways in our hands. People who are in our age group right now, people who are between 40 to 65 years of age, these are the people who have to do the best possible things in the next 6 to 12 months. Only then there is salvation for humanity.
Sadhguru, thank you so much, and we're looking forward to your blessing to continue and learn from you and take it on, Sadhguru. Thank you so much, Sadhguru.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sadhguruji.
Thank you. Thank
Sorry if I've been very harsh in my thing, but if I don't speak what I see as true, I can't digest the food I eat, that's my problem.
But Sadhguru, we came to you only for this. And we have got it, and we have got it in such a beautiful way, Sadhguru. So we love it. We love it, Sadhguru. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.